Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 630.
WMAL.
8:38 on WMAL. Good Wednesday morning to you. Pleased to be joined now by Isiah Leggett, Ike Leggett, Montgomery County Executive. We had a heated debate on the show yesterday about this proposed curfew in Montgomery County. Some people in this room in favor of it, some people in the room against it. Let's see where the county executive stands on it. Mr. County Executive, good morning. Thanks for coming on the show.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Well, there's a proposed curfew for children under the age of 18, or those under the age of 18. They would have to be off the streets at 11 o'clock during the week and off the streets by midnight on the weekends.
That's correct.
Exactly why is this needed in Montgomery County, and is it something that you support?
Well, I introduced it, so it's my proposal. Let's back up for just 1 second and keep in mind that in the District of Columbia and in Prince George's County, we already have curfews. And you have situations literally where young people standing on one side of the street in establishments are subject to a curfew and just across the street. Others are not. You have a situation now where people who find themselves who have expired in terms of the time and curfews in the district or Prince George's County literally come to Montgomery County because they continue to party and socialize into the wee hours. This is not a panacea for all of the, quote, antisocial behavior that young people are engaged in. But it is one tool, I think, in the toolbox, along with all the other things we're doing. One of the concerns that I have is to not have Montgomery County become the location for which young people gather after hours when they cannot do the same thing in the neighboring literally across the street in other communities.
But are you having problems with these kids that are, gathering in certain places? I mean, is it an issue? Is there crime besides?
Oh, yeah, there are some. Yeah, there are some. And what I'm trying to do is to make certain that we not get to a pivotal point whereby we're looking back and we're saying, oh, boy, we should have done this some time ago. We already recognize that in certain areas of the county that there are some concerns. And those areas are clearly areas where young people are gathering.
Do you have a problem, let's say at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, of gangs and other activity? I mean, is this why the police department wants this, to sort of be able to crack down on kids who are just out walking around? I mean, I'm of the opinion that no good comes from having groups of kids sort of walking around the county at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, we're not talking about all kids. We're simply talking about those under the age of 18. And certainly when you have large numbers of kids like that and you have groups that generally gather in certain locations, then yes, it causes problems. And what we don't want to do is have those problems continue to rise. And what we don't want to do is have Montgomery County become the location for all those young people gather. We're not reinventing the wheel here. We're looking at a problem that we are having, and that problem is caused, A, because we have large numbers of young people, B, we have our neighboring jurisdictions with these measures already in place, and I simply do not want Montgomery County to become the location for which young people decide they can gather because they can't do it in other jurisdictions. And we are, in fact, having some challenges with large numbers of young people.
Is there evidence in Washington, D.C. or in Prince George's County that this curfew actually helps? Because I'm fairly certain that D.C. and PG County are not bereft of teen crime late at night.
In fact, the crime rate in Montgomery County, as you probably know, is lower than in those neighboring jurisdictions, and I want to keep it there.
Well, that's what what I'm asking is, I don't think that Washington, D.C. has solved its gang problem or its teen crime problem with a curfew for minors.
We're not going to solve it with this alone. There are other things that we're doing as well. If you look at my budget that I put in for the last year, the only area of the budget that increased was, in fact, the police, and the areas that we are concentrating on are some of the same areas that this measure is designed to impact. In addition to that, we're doing a lot of other things in terms of our positive youth initiative, trying to provide things outside of the public safety arena. So you simply cannot look at a curfew alone and say that will be the panacea to your concerns.
What would
you have to look at all those things?
Yeah, but my issue is if there is no evidence that it solves the problem, then I have an issue with government intervening.
Yeah,
so that's
let's back up for a second. Well, you can't wait until the problem is over your heads and then say, well, we should have done this before. And you can't simply isolate this out by itself to say that this is the cause and effect of the problem. This is one tool. Give it an example. If you have large numbers of people who are gathering together today, incidents that we have in the county, and we could point to those incidents, the law officials are simply not able to either disperse those people until we have some actual crime that is committed, rather than just simply say, you know, outside of this establishment, there are too many young people. There are people here underage. Why don't you disperse, and why don't you go home, and why don't you allow people to enter? There are a number of things that they cannot now do. And so the problem that we're saying is government intervening. Government intervening in a lot of areas where there's public safety concerns.
Well, it just sounds like that could justify a lot of things, and I'll let Brian go ahead.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on you. I'm with you on this, but I mean, what do you say to those people who say, oh, it's the nanny state, it's government getting in our business, we're parents, we ought to be able to make the call on what our kids can and cannot do? Yeah, what do you say to those people?
Well, you could say the same thing if you say the nanny state as it relates to our business related to a lot of activities. But we've made it as a society to say there are certain activities, certain kinds of things that, i.e., the public should not accept. That is, when we have areas of crime that are being committed, we have large numbers of young people who are actively involved, we have challenges with gangs, to simply say the government should not intervene because that's the nanny state, then you could write off a whole lot of rules and regulations that are on the books today.
Well, you understand there are those who would say, well, that's exactly what we should do.
I understand that, and I disagree with those.
Well, let me, on your line of thinking, though, if you're having problems because, you know, D.C. and Prince George's County have passed this law, and you're seeing teenagers come into your county because they can't do it anymore in Prince George's and D.C., you could say it's the same thing for illegal immigration as well. You know, people who are cracking down in other jurisdictions and they're then being forced they can't stay in that county, then head over to Montgomery County as well.
And we are addressing that. And so it's not to suggest that we should not become the dumping ground for any of those activities, and we are addressing those concerns. Again, when you look at the challenge here to say the government should not intervene, the government should not be involved, then you can draw a line, a circle that would include a large number of things that you simply would not do. You could excuse a large number of drug laws. You could excuse all marijuana. You could excuse a whole bunch of things under that area. You could excuse prostitution in certain areas and make that legal as well, because government is in fact intervening. Now, people may say government should not do that. I disagree.
Right, but what I'm saying is if you're going to do the same thing that Prince George's and D.C. do, why not do the same thing that maybe Prince William County does when it comes to illegal immigration? You have to take the same stance.
Because we have some other areas in which we can address that other than what they are actually doing, and we don't necessarily agree with their approach to all of those things. Mm-hmm. There are other ways in which we have addressed it, and we have in fact addressed that, but not precisely the same way. Gotcha. What we see here now is a tool that we think is effective, and we're utilizing that tool in a way that we think can address this concern.
All right, Mr. County Executive, we appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Ike Leggett, Montgomery County Executive here on WMAL.